Assalamu alaikum. It's my opportunity, pleasure, and honor to salute the professors of Port Said and to salute the professionals and students of the new generations in nursing for the beginning of the sixth Congress that today takes place at Al Fairuz, organized by the Port Said University Faculty of Nursing, but above all by the great Professor Ahmed Salama, the man I am in contact for a few years and whose research in neurosophy I have been following since the beginning. In fact, two professors have started essentially at the same time. The connection of neurosophic philosophy applied both to physics, both to science, both to health, and applied by the initiation of Professor Lofty Zadeh from Uzbekistan or Azerbaijan. He's a professor that made the completely new notion of fuzzy cells. With this notion, with relation non-transitive, a mathematical system and logic with a third value has been developed by name of neurosophy, started essentially by Professor Florentin Samaradance, then in Romania, now at New Mexico, and inshallah, we shall first come to Egypt next May in a Congress where perhaps, inshallah, I'll be able to attend and to meet you there. In any case, my speech goes into the academic eulogy of Professor Ahmed Salama. In fact, it's an act we do here in Portugal, South Europe. We do it in the university when we welcome full professors called catedráticos in honoris causa act. Professor Ahmed Salama is one of the scientists I follow the most in Egypt. The other is Mohammed Al-Nashir. And Al-Nashir has a new idea. He's the organizer of one magazine, peer-reviewed, on chaos, solitons, and fractals. There is another one only on fractals. So this is one of the most generalized and abringent notions in applied mathematics. The other applied mathematics that is done in Port Said and now in Al Fairuz, and I think also in Al Arish in Egypt, is neurosophy. And elsewhere, I must remember the names of Victor Cristianso, who put us in contact. In fact, our first contact had to do with Professor Ahmed Salama recognition in Malawi, Cyprus University. And from there, I have like two ways in life. My father brought me into mathematics, and he brought me into science. He was a socialist, and he was the first man in the government of socialists after our democratic revolution in 74. In 77, he occupied for the first time in Portuguese history the degree of science. And my mother was a pharmacian. In a certain way, she was close to the students that we are having here in this meeting today. So my father and my mother unite themselves in the homage I pay as a tribute to Professor Ahmed Salama. And this way of applying mathematics to health sciences remembers me well a thing that I started from the beginning, so many years ago, theoretical biology. It was started by Waddington. And then Eric Christopher Zeeman came from Warwick with fuzzy spaces, so similar to the ones of Lofty's out there, to the ones that give rise to the beginning of neurosophy. And then René Thom, the one with the catastrophe theory, that means the theory of discontinuities emerging, and that went into morphogenesis. So, 4 different ways: fuzziness in the beginning, then morphology in one of the ways which has to do with the mathematics or continuous versus the continuous. And then what I would say the philosophy of third wave, like intuitionists said, not exactly truth, not exactly false, something like in between, something like interrogation mark, something like a third or more than one third dimension of truth. In fact, Newton da Costa in Brazil, still alive, made logics with 3, 4, 5, infinity. Those of truth. Well, Newtonography is one of them and is the most applied in the world. Therefore, I pay my tribute again to Port Said University, to the 6th Assembly of Nursing Professors and Students, and above all, to my close friend, Professor Ahmed Sadr. Bismillah. Thank you.
Good morning. Professor Salama asked me to make a second movie explaining better our gratefulness to nursing faculty of Port Said University for giving us the opportunity to lecture a few minutes on the power of Neitroosophy and on the way it came into the history of ideas. It starts further in time to millennia ago. It starts with the problem of the universals as it was solved both by Plato and by Aristotle. Universalia ante rem is Platonicism. Universalia in rem is Aristotle's way of seeing. Both of them mounted schools in Grecia. One is Lyceum, the other is Academia. And their ways of acting and thinking and talking and writing are expressed wisely in Raphael painting. One of them, Plato, looks at the sky with an upper gesture. The other one, more realistic, Aristotle, points to the land. Neitroosophy, as well as transdisciplinarity, appear in the 20th century, and they appear as consequences of another way of seeing, a more modern one. It started with Abelardus and Eloisa in Middle Ages. It is conceptualism. It is its lemma is Universalia post rem. Universals appear after the emerging of things. And this is the way of medicine, of healing, of diagnosing. In fact, our professor, Simões da Fonseca, our late psychiatrist, did its development in mathematical approach through cybernetics both in America and in Portugal, and then he came to Africa to do it in Cabo Verde. Therefore, I am proud to present this way of ideas nowadays in Egypt and the way it has been contained, which is called transdisciplinarity, made by Bassar Abricolesco and started as a second step in Portugal in the first congress with our great artist, Lima Freitas. So we see philosophy of ideas and beings versus health and diagnosing versus mathematics. In the history of mathematics, you have some kinds of simultaneity. For instance, calculus was founded by Leibniz and Newton at the same time, 17th century. Non-Euclidean geometry has been founded by Riemann in Germany and Lobachevsky in Kazakhstan. Today, once again, it's a Muslim people that makes the idea of tolerance or fuzziness. At the same time, a symposium did his thesis in Warwick, England. The today living Professor Lofty Zadeh developed it in Azerbaijan. So in Muslim world, the revolutions in science, or shall I say, the paradigm shifts are happening. And the main consequence seems to be the way into applied sciences that Neitroosophy has been put in by a a wise man. He comes from Romania, today in New Mexico, after spending some time as a refugee in Muslim world in Algeria. So now in Egypt, the presentation of application of Neitrosophy to health is nowadays put in public and presented to scholars and to students of the new generation. And we are grateful for the Faculty of Nursing of Port Said University to be a forerunner in this way of making research and making health for mankind. Thank you. Hello, my name is Zakaros. I am talking from Portugal at the invitation of Professor Salama. He called me to explain the things that happen so that we are together in a same university and academic endeavor. For that, I have to talk a little bit about Egypt, about what I would say out of Africa brought to me, and what is the experience being had these years in Malawi. Let us start by Egypt. Egypt has the main trains of science. 2,000 years ago, Euclid in Alexandria was writing the geometry. It's the foundation of mathematics. In the 20th century, I know at least 3 scientists that are powerful. One is Professor Salwa Al-Shawan, who brought to Portugal to bring ethnomusicology. And this ethnomusicology she brought here is now being studied in all the former colonies of the Empire of Portugal. It was called at that time the Fifth Empire, and it came from Egypt. As is coming from Egypt, also from Alexandria, Professor Mohammed El Nashie. He's the editor of the journal Solitors, Cows and Fractals. I would say the only journal in the world that centralizes this very new way of trend. And here now in Port Said, we have Professor Salama, and he is one of the members of this new current called Neitrosophy. Neitrosophy has come from both the traditions of intuitionism, which separated tertium non datur principle in logic, and then the fuzziness spaces theorized by Lofty Zadeh. I think he's still alive in Azerbaijan. Well, Florentius Banadanche put it in applied mathematics. Victor Cristianto did it in Indonesia after studying cosmology in Moscow and coming back home by his face. And Professor Salama, here between us, is doing this application. In fact, I have a debt to Victor Cristianto. We were corresponding at the time in cosmology, and then he explained me that faith brought him home. And now he tries to synthesize the Big Bang with the Genesis chapter of the Bible. He submitted my name to Cyprus Evangelic University in Malawi. What is Cyprus? Essentially, its seat is in Austin, Texas. In Austin, there is another university, which is the Freemason University, parallel to the one of Vrije University, Brussels, where Nobel Prizes like Gunzing, Engler, Prigozhin work, as they go working also in Austin, Texas. A small one is Cyprus University. It is directed by Donald Vestal. I think he's a pilot from Strategic Air Command in America and an evangelic, faithful man who preaches. The preachers in Africa were started by Professor Gadama. The first session has been in Liberia, second in Burkina Faso. Nowadays, he's Vice Chancellor in Malawi, and in these ceremonies, he ordains. different kinds of scholars and people of prestige, either, for instance, in religion. They started with some priests and bishops, as well as in political, like speakers in the parliament. They have honored scholars, intellectuals, professors have came. For instance, one of my grantees in alternative solar science flew from Myanmar to Malawi. And in fact, at the time I was directing Erasmus Mundus program with Asia. A few others were invited and could not find the way to travel. Fortunately enough, Professor Gadama financed the travel of Aung Zae. And during these years also a great man from Egypt was honored, and he is Professor Ahmed Salama, who is in the Congress today. I hope his predecessor, Florentin Smaradance, is also sending a video like I am, and Professor Gadama, who honored him. And in fact, there is, I would say, a religious transfiguration. It was a small university that starts going higher and higher in ceremonies every year. Think of the following. First of all, bishops, then scholars, now kings and emperors, what we called in Angola sobas, local monarchs from different countries in Africa. And then also higher political men. For instance, the President of the Republic of Mozambique, the land of my father, well, he was honored last year. And, well, let me talk a little bit about my father. He's also an out-of-Africa personality. He was the best student ever in Mozambique, and Mozambique was not developed at that time. So there was a grant for him, and also for a black poet. One white and one black came in the same boat, and then he became the founder of Statistics of Extremes here in Portugal. And as democracy came, he was the first Secretary of State to make a structure for science in Portugal. So out of Mozambique comes also, in moments of difficulty, comes the best of spirit. And in Malawi also, for instance, since we are in a colloquium of nursery, let me refer I would say, the main personality that was honored last year, Bruno Garnero. He's a commander in the Navy of France. He was specialized in parachutism and in the way of controlling the health of naval pilots going up and down from airplanes carriers. And then he had lessons from a spiritual master in Japan. He developed a way by respiration, and by respiration he's treating diseases like AIDS, like allergies, like cancer. So you see, Commander, he was Nobel Prize of Peace because he went to Lebanon. And essentially, when there was a bombardment, he went to the houses as a good neighbor of the bombarded peoples. Either he went to Muslims or to Christians. And then, well, he had two honors in life at least. One, the Nobel Prize of Peace. The other, the professorship at Cyprus University. And there he was, side by side with Professor Salama. So, this is the info I have to share with you, and I may send all of it in a written form by links to every bit of information here. Thank you very much. Bye.
My great pleasure and honor to talk once again to Professor Ahmed Salama. We have been together in Cyprus University in recognition, and then we are together now in Marlinskaya Academy in Moscow. In fact, another professor from Egypt is there, Madame Bohra. We are working together in some senses of the term working and in senses of togetherness. We belong to the same scientific associations. We have from the basis a mathematical preparation, and Professor Salama, more than me, went into the health sciences. In fact, he did the necessary issues to make a school of nursing, to whom I spoke last year once in a shorter video. And also this year she's preparing in Fairuz in April a congress. And then it appears that inshallah, Professor Florentine Smaradance and me, we are going to stay for some time working in Egypt with your team. Allow me to talk a little bit about myself. I am lesser than my father. My father was once in Egypt in 1991 in a statistics congress in Cairo. In fact, my father is the founder of statistics in Portugal. My father was African. My father was African from Mozambique, and he founded the statistics of extremes. My father was in 1977 the first Secretary of State for Science in a socialist government who was the first constitutional government in democracy. In fact, he is one of the founders of the Socialist Party. He was State Secretary for Science, and he put research in the universities. There is a small similarity at a lesser scale that he did it in Egypt, the biggest and longest in time museum of the world is the one in Cairo. And my father brought to Portugal a smaller museum of anthropology. My father did this job for a short time. In fact, he died early of a heart attack. He died younger than me. And somehow I followed him. I followed him in the history and philosophy of sciences. And somehow I brought them to Africa, that he left in the youth. Essentially, I built mathematics and philosophy in Cape Verde, and then I worked eastward. I went to the Pacific and did the same, essentially, in Timor. Nowadays, it appears, inshallah, with luck, that we are cooperating together. I shall be there in a congress, and I hope to prolongate my stay for a longer time. I hope that there will be an investment similar from the Egyptian government, namely at national and at local level in the School of Philosophy, as my father has done in a way similar, first as professor and secondly as government member. In fact, my father built the scientific centers in the universities, and if I understand well, the philosophy who already has in Egypt television to whom I think I'm talking now, and has also a group of mathematics. I hope the philosophy becomes a recognized current for science in Egypt. In fact, Egypt, I followed for a long time what Egypt did in sciences. I cannot forget that Euclid lived in Egypt, in Alexandria, and he built the elements for the basis of geometry. And nowadays in Alexandria, we have the pioneer, Professor El Nashian, the pioneer of chaos, solitons, and fractals. In our center, not in our center, sorry, in our Moscow Academy, Marlinskaya, we have Professor Salama, we have Professor Madame Bushra. And the other most important person for culture and for the history of mankind is Minister Awas. It appears that in the last December, like a Christmas present, he went to Curitiba to build the Museum of Pharaohs. And he built it in a I would say, a spiritual center where I was once, the Rosicrucian Center. I attended there to a ceremony of spiritual initiation made in the sense of the pharaohs. In fact, it appears that one of the main pharaohs, about 25 centuries ago, was the father of the fathers of the Rosicrucians in a spiritual way of presenting it. Now it appears that I have to talk a little bit about philosophy. I see it as a philosopher. In the history of philosophy, I learned with my father there were three domains in nominalia. Nominalia ante rem, it was Platonism. Nominalia in rem, the names and the things. It was Aristotelianism that gave formalism in mathematics. And then Abelard made nominalia post rem. It gave rise to the concept of mathematics that is called intuitionism. Well, I think that neutrosophy, with the third domain of truth, is one of the applications of intuitionism to applied mathematics. And I see another one, and this other one is the one I shall try to bring to Egypt for the first time. It is called transdisciplinarity. It has been founded by Basarab Nicolescu from Romania, still alive. It has a few Nobel Prizes inside. It's always the idea of a logic with more values, approaching different levels of reality, approaching philosophy, of science, approaching complexity. So this is another dimension complementary to neutrosophy that I think will arrive to Egypt, inshallah, next May. The other thing I might bring, if it is interesting, would be our Center of Philosophy of Sciences and the information from our UNESCO Chair on Intangible Heritage, in the place of the world where the heritage is the most tangible. Therefore, I'll keep everyday contact with Professor Salama and with all that are interested in corresponding with me. And then from May on, inshallah, I hope I will stay for a very long time in Egypt. But nowadays, unfortunately, I'm retired and free, and I hope I can share my little knowledge and great force of work. Bismillah. Thank you. Bye.